Welcome to our LB's The Lover of Book Author Chat. If this is your first time here or watching a recording, I'm so glad you found us. You're in great company. I have had the honor to interview over 60 debut to best-selling authors, and readers like you have helped my YouTube channel grow. We have amassed almost 14,500 hours watched. So thank y'all
Oh,
so much. I appreciate y'all tuning in and liking and commenting, because when you do, that helps more readers find this content. But today we are here for our summer and December series, and we're kicking it off with the amazing Kristy Woodson Harvey, who happens to be in North Carolina, same state as me, to discuss her latest, A Happier Life. Get ready, because later on in the chat, she's going to reveal some news, so that will be totally exciting. But now I want to introduce Kristy. She's a New York Times, USA Today, and Publisher Weekly's best-selling author of 11 novels. And that includes this book, A Happier Life, The Summer of Songbirds, and the Peachtree Bluff series. Many of her books have been optioned or in development for television or film and have received numerous accolades, including GMA's Buzz Pick, Southern Living's Most Anticipated Reads, and Katie Couric's Featured Books. Kristy is the winner of the Lucy Bramlett Peterson Award in Excellent and Creative Writing, and a finalist, that's right, for the Southern Book Prize. Really cool. A Phi Beta Kappa summa cum laude graduate of University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. My daughter just applied. Fingers crossed, everybody. School of Journalism. Her writing has appeared in numerous publications, including Southern Living, Parade, Traditional Home, USA Today, and many more. She also holds a master in English with a concentration of multicultural and transnational literature. She is, and I'm sure most of you already know this, she's a co-creator and co-host of the weekly web show and podcast Friends and Fiction, which I already see some merch in the chat, with her fellow New York Times bestselling authors, Mary Kate Andrews, Kristen Harmel, and Patty Callahan Henry. She's also the co-founder of interior site Design Chic with her mom, the amazing as well, Beth Woodson. And like I said, she lives on the North Carolina coast with her husband, son, and guess what? Her dog, Salt. So she's always, and I will talk about what she's working on next coming up, but welcome so much, Kristy. Thanks for joining us.
thanks for having me. Oh, it's so good to see everybody. Lots of familiar faces and some new ones too. So thank y'all for being here. I really appreciate it. On this first day of December, we just got finished decorating our Christmas tree. So
We still have a ways to go. We have not finished our decorating. So,
well, I'm a real stickler for like the day after Thanksgiving, but we were in New York and we just got home and this is small town Beaufort here for you, but the Rotary Club has a tree lot every year. It's like their big fundraiser. And one of the women that runs the tree lot knew we were going to New York. She called me and was like, "Do you want me to save you a tree? And how many feet of pine roping do you want?" And like, so she had set aside like the perfect little tree for me. And anyway, she was so cute. I was like, that is just some good small town right there for you.
that is absolutely perfect and could be in a book at some point. I'm
Yeah,
just saying.
right. I mean, like it's really on theme. Like it could have been in A Happier Life. It could be in a Peachtree book. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, definitely. Well, this book starts out with an interesting beginning because you have a home, a house that has a voice. Why did you decide to open with the house telling us kind of the status of what's been happening? And if these walls could talk, right?
Yeah. So this is actually a really funny story. I'm glad that you asked this. One of the initial inspirations for A Happier Life was kind of the idea that our houses hold our stories. And I live in a 1903 house in Beaufort where the book is set. And it's one of the newer houses in town, actually. A lot of the houses around us are from the 1700s, but the original house here burnt down. And so this was the house they rebuilt in 1903. But so many times I've thought like, oh my goodness, like what if these walls could talk, really? So that was kind of something that I wanted to explore in this story. And so originally I wrote maybe 6 or 7 little snippets from the point of view of the house that run through the story that sort of focused on the fragility of our lives, I feel like, and the ways in which things are kind of happening around us that we aren't even really sure of. And when I got finished with the first draft, I thought, I don't really think I need that. And so I took it out except for the prologue. And then my editor at the time was like, I don't really know that we need to hear from the house. And I was like, okay. So fast forward, the book was about to go to production, and this is like too much inside baseball, long story, but for lots of reasons, I got a new editor right before the book came out. And basically something that had been in the works for a long time. And so she came in and she read the book and she emailed me and she said, is this weird? I feel like if we had a prologue from the point of view of the house, that'd be so cool. And she's like, but we're going to press in like 2 days. I don't know if you can even pull that off. And like 30 seconds later, I was like, what about this? And she was like, oh my gosh, yes, this is perfect. And I was like, well, I'd already written it. So it ended up being it felt sort of serendipitous. And it was our like first thing together that happened when she was my new editor. And I thought, okay, well, we must be really in sync if we both thought, there really needs to be something from the point of view of the house here. So I love the idea that was kind of like our first move together. And I've gotten a lot of good feedback about it. And I actually thought about maybe doing an epilogue from the point of view of the house as well. But when I felt like the ending just felt like the ending. Like I just didn't feel like I needed any more. I feel like everyone kind of, it all wrapped up and everybody sort of had their ending. And I didn't really feel like I needed the house at that point.
It did. Absolutely loved it. So I'll also give you the feedback that I loved the house's perspective. It had such a warm feel to it. I mean, you had the coldness of the house, right? But that
Yeah.
how much love had been in the home and kind of what we were anticipating to happen, which I loved. And I do think that it did wrap up with at the end, but I did want the epilogue. I will say, like I
You
thought,
did?
yes, like I was
I
just
can
like,
send it to you.
yes, please do. Please share it. I thought it was fantastic. But I love that the house had emotions, like that it missed the sounds and the smells the most, because that is what we all sort of remember. And so it was almost just that extra character that was special that you don't really read about too much. So
Oh, good. Well, thank you. Glad you liked it.
the other thing I wanted to jump right into was salt, because obviously your salt had some inspiration on Happier Life salt. What was it? Just you're like, salt's going to be in this one?
Yeah. Well, so a lot of, especially the friends and fiction people on the screen have heard me say this, but um, it bears repeating really. So I was not a dog person ever. I never wanted a dog. Like I grew up being like, I never want a dog. They shed and they smell and I'm never having a dog. So my husband and I got married and he didn't have a dog at that particular moment because he had just graduated from dental school, but he grew up always having like a pair of labs, just with him all the time. And so he was a big dog person, but I was very clear, like I will never have a dog. So we have a son and I guess he had just turned 10 and my husband and my son were both kind of like, sure would be nice to have a dog. And my husband always be like, a boy really needs to have a dog. And my son would be like, oh, can we please get a puppy? And I was like, no, hard no, we're not getting a dog. Y'all know this about me. It's not happening. So I don't know what it was. I don't know. I joke like I hadn't even had a glass of wine. I don't even know what like wore me down. But my husband came home one night and there was this puppy that one of his someone that he worked with had, and he was like, she was going to keep the puppy, but now she can't, and she wanted to know if we wanted it, and so I don't know. I just saw this little puppy and I don't know what made me say, I was like, fine. I was like, fine. If y'all are so dead set on having a dog, that's fine. And I was like, but this is going to be y'all's dog. You're going to feed it. You're going to walk it. You're going to train it. I will tolerate the dog, but I am not, that's it. So we get the puppy and like the first day I'm holding the puppy and my husband takes a picture of me and sends it to my group text of my high school friends. And the first two texts that come back are, it's the apocalypse and hell has frozen over because like I was never going to have a dog and everyone knew it about me. And then I got him and of course, I'm the one home with him, right? And I mean, I just fell madly in love with him. I have all these videos. I was looking back. It was just his third birthday. It was just his third birthday. So I was looking back over pictures of my child's life, as you do. And I was, he's like this teeny little puppy, and like I'm training him and teaching him how to walk on the leash, and I'm carrying him around everywhere. And oh my gosh. So yeah, we're best friends. But I did think it would be kind of fun to write about him. And I had we'd had it maybe 6 months or something when I started writing this book. And so I just thought, oh, this will be fun to like have a dog in the book. But also, honestly, in a very practical sense, I knew that I was going to have Keaton be alone for at least like a little chunk of this book. And I thought it's kind of nice to have someone to talk to out loud, like so you don't have to be in the character's head the entire time. And obviously the dog isn't going to talk back, but you could at least say some things out loud to the dog. And I thought it made it a little more interesting. But it was very fun to have him in there. And actually the paperback has Salt on the cover.
Ah, well, I will say one of my notes I'm looking at as I'm so glad you gave her Salt because we get so much more narrative and emotion out of her
Yeah,
that way.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it just, it's been I appreciated it. And of course, I think someone else said, Nancy, a book's just great with a dog in it. So totally
Oh,
agree with that,
thank you.
Nancy.
Well, it was my first, but won't be my last. It was really fun to get to write a dog. And, it's kind of my love letter to Salt.
Well, he's definitely loved by many now. Okay, let's go ahead and jump a little bit because
Look,
part
I
of
see a
this book,
tail and in the background of Anissa's screen over there.
yes, I do too. My doodle is 115 pounds, but thinks he's a lap dog. So my husband keeps him because otherwise he would be right here and you wouldn't even be able to see me. So
Well,
yeah,
Salt was crying at the door, but my husband just started cooking bacon. So, like for breakfast in the morning. So he is no longer interested in me.
yeah, that's like as good as it gets with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Mhm.
All right. I want to talk about a little bit with the theme is you don't know, so you said, don't you have to know where you come from to know where you're going? And I felt like that was sort of a bit of a theme throughout the book. Was that intentional when you put that in that statement, or did it just sort of happen?
Yeah. So I think I'm not a person who, I mean, I'm not going to say 100% because there's always an exception to the rule, but I don't think I've ever really set out to write a book with a certain message or a certain theme or a certain kind of like idea behind it. I mean, I definitely wait, can we say spoilers in this one?
Oh, yes. This is
Okay.
spoiler
Okay,
full.
I thought this was spoiler zone. Okay, so I originally set out, I mean, I knew how I wanted them to die. Like I knew the ending of this book before I started, which is kind of unusual for me. But I did at least know that going in. But I guess, if I like it seems kind of obvious now, like a, woman's life is falling apart and she goes back to her grandparents' house to kind of find who she is. But I hadn't really planned for her to sort of like pick up the Rebecca St. James mantle. That was not part of my plan for the story. I hadn't really thought about it. And then as I was going along and she was kind of reinventing her life, I thought, well, what if? And truly, as I'm writing and these things just kind of come and they happen. And when they're in that plane and Harris says, if she was alive now, she would have an Instagram account and a million followers and she'd be at Rebecca St. James. And I was like, wait, that would be a really fun idea for her granddaughter. Like it wasn't something that I'd ever planned out. And so I think in that way, it kind of became like, it definitely became a theme at that point in a very literal sense. Like she finds out where she came from and then kind of, changes her life because of that. I don't think it's always so dramatic, with a lot of us, but I do think that there are a lot of people who, once they find out kind of a missing piece of their past or, um, sometimes things make more sense to them and I think also in a more figurative sense, I think the fact that she's always been terrified to fly and she never really knew why. In my very first draft, I played with that kind of ancestral memory a lot more than I did in the final draft because you went into the story knowing that they died in a plane crash. And so you saw a lot more of that, but then of course now, with this one, you don't 100% know until the end. And so I didn't want to like give it away too much.
So, how many drafts do you go through? Because you talked about a couple of different things
Yeah.
that didn't happen. So, what does
Yeah.
that look like for this book?
It kind of depends. Every book is different. I mean, sometimes I keep waiting to get to that elusive novel where I'm like, oh, I read it and I'm like, yes, it's ready to go. But I don't know that that ever happens or ever could or will. And actually, I just finished my 2026 first draft. And I kept thinking maybe this is just going to be the one. And the first 150 pages, I was like, man, like I have really nailed this. And then the last like 100 pages, I'm like, yeah. And then the middle it's kind of middly. I'm going to be honest, it's a little middly. I'm like, okay, I got to really work on that. So, you just never know. I mean, it's just there's always a lot of work that goes into it, but I am a very fast drafter. Like I write between 2 and 5,000 words a day. So I'll usually write a first draft in 35 to 45 days probably. So that part is really quick for me because I'm trying to learn the story. And so then I feel like once I have like a framework for the story, I'm going back and kind of diving into those really like bigger questions of like, what does this character want and why can't they get it? And what is their story arc and what can I lean into? And does the setting feel enough like a character? Those things that I'm like adding in details and even simple things like character descriptions, I will have them in my head, but because I'm trying to get a story on the paper, I'm not necessarily taking a long time to describe like this is how, Harris walks or whatever it is. Like those things I'm kind of layering those things back in. And so I think once I have the basic framework, but I usually go through, I would say probably 3 to 4 drafts before I turn it into my editor. And then once my editor gets it, we'll go through what they call like a developmental draft, which is like she'll go through and say, these are the big things I see. And I will say I've had a lot of different editors in my career. The one I have now is a very veteran editor. She's been at it a really long time. And I remember, going through Beach House Rules, which is about to come out, and I was like, I don't feel like you said too much. And she's like, this is your 11th novel. Like, yeah, I'm not gonna nitpick you apart. Like, I think that you're a big girl now. So, which was really kind of nice to have someone like have that faith in you. But, so she's really good about like asking questions that take me to like a deeper place in the story. And that was kind of terrifying for me at first because she's not writing me like copious notes. She's just giving me this kind of larger suggestion and feedback. So that's another draft. And then we'll do like a little line edit, and that's another draft. But I would say personally, and with my editor, I probably go through, I'm going to say on average, like 8 to 10 drafts. And that's, I mean, those are of varying sizes. Like some of the drafts I am like really pulling apart and putting back together. And then some of them are like very tiny. Like I'm reading out loud. I'm making sure the dialogue sounds right. I'm trying to get all the characters' voices, very specifically to sound like them. I mean, they're big rewrites and then there are little rewrites. And so
Right.
draft is kind of a big word probably for some of them. But and I probably read the book at least 15 or 20 times before it's in the world.
Do you read out loud or is that
Yes.
okay?
Yes, it's a very important part of my process and it's so tedious. Not the reading out loud, but the last thing I do before I give it to my editor is I read the whole thing. Like I go chapter by chapter and I read it and then I read it out loud. And then I read it and then I read it out like each chapter.
Mhm.
There's something about when I have to print it. There's something about printing that I catch a million more things. I'll be like, oh my gosh, this draft is so clean. And I print it out and I'll find like 10 things per page. I don't know if that's just like, I don't know what it is, but there's something about seeing it in print where I catch a lot more. And there's something about reading it out loud, especially for dialogue. I mean, I think it just sounds different when you read it out loud and you'll think, well, that might be correct, but that's not really how he would say that, or that's not how she would say that. Or I think it helps me a lot.
Did you also have a say in the audiobook narration? Because I did listen for parts of that and I thought they were pretty good. So
I
I
thought
would
they were
love
really, really good.
that. Really great.
I did. And it was hard because they sent me a lot of really good candidates. That is really difficult, especially when it comes to a Southern accent. And something that I've gotten in trouble with before is I've had actors that have read in their normal voice and I've chosen them, and then they read the book and I don't hear it until it comes out. And it's read in this like terrible Southern accent, or not even a terrible Southern accent, but Southern accents are so specific and not everyone sounds like they're from rural Alabama. And if you are, I love that accent and I think it's adorable, but sometimes it doesn't fit if you're like if a character's like from Florida, they're not going to have like a real Southern accent. So I think those types of things I'm always like kind of try to be careful about. But yeah, I think I loved these. I actually have to be honest, I haven't listened to this whole book, but I listened to enough that I thought, oh, they really nailed it. And Townsend, so like he really gave me warm fuzzies. I thought he was great, but I thought they were all fantastic. And I will have to say, I'm a huge Gilmore Girls fan, and the woman who read Devin Sorbery, who read for Keaton, played Honor Huntsberger in the Gilmore Girls. And so when I saw her, I was like, I don't even need to hear her. Just if she'll do it, that's who I want. You're like, okay, great.
I was thinking about you recently when I saw Kelly Bishop on Shrinking. She's on that
Yes.
series. I was like, oh my gosh, I wonder if she knows this.
It was so good. So I'm like, I don't know where I've been because everyone keeps being like, it's so good, it's so good. I finally watched it. And when she was on those few episodes, I was like, ah. Well, when so probably not everyone would know this, but so Kelly Bishop has a new memoir out, and I got to interview her as part of her book tour, which was so cool and just like a real moment for me because again, huge Gilmore Girls fan. And I have to say, Emily was my favorite. I met Lauren Graham at East Hampton Authors Night this summer or last summer. And that was really cool. I actually like sat beside her at the table. They should not have let me do that, but I think it was just pure alphabetical luck because we were, Graham and Harvey. But she was great, and like that was really exciting for me. But there was something about Emily Gilmore, she just is, she's incredible. And getting to interview her was like just a huge thrill. But she told me that she had that cameo, and she was actually flying. She was leaving. We were in Raleigh, and she was leaving like 2 days later to go to Paris to film something that she's doing with Amy Sherman Palladino. And I mean, the woman's 80 years old. Like she is, that is. I mean, to go on a book tour and then go to Paris and film. And I'm like, wow, I don't know if I could do that now.
Yeah, she's
I mean, I
impressive.
would, don't get me wrong. I would.
Yeah, so you wouldn't turn down Paris. Come on.
Yeah, right. I'd be there.
I would say though that the narrators, I am very picky about Southern accents as well, and I thought they did a great job. Like it was a good narration. So I wanted to give you that feedback because a lot of authors don't even listen to their audiobooks. Like they can't do it.
Well,
So
and sometimes, I mean, and sometimes they don't. I would say that's a newer thing for me. I mean, my first probably, I mean, I'd say even like 5 or 6 books, I don't think anyone asked my opinion on who the narrator was. I think they just went for it. And the funniest thing was I was listening to Slightly South of Simple, it was my third book, and it's the first book in the Peachtree Bluff series. And I was listening to it, and I didn't know who the narrator was. And I was in Atlanta, and I kept hearing this woman talk, and I kept looking around. I was like, I finally walked up to her, and I was like, I feel like maybe we've met. And I was like, I'm Kristy Woodson Harvey. And she goes, oh my God, I'm Ansley. And she had narrated. She has such a distinctive, like, again, I mean, she's a true Georgian drawl, like, and that is her actual accent, and that is her real voice. And it was just so good. And so as I was writing the subsequent books in that series, I would hear her as Ansley in my head.
that is a stamp. Like what a great thing. I don't know. I just love, I think audiobooks are really taking off. And I mean, they have been, and it's just so important to do an author justice because if they don't, you hate that it might ruin or change somebody's opinion for the book. So wanted to
Yeah.
give you that feedback. I know you said that Townsend gave you the warm and fuzzies. I wanted to talk about him because he finds love at first sight, which
Yeah.
I was just curious, like, do you believe that exists in real life or is it just on the pages?
Well, I definitely do because I saw my husband walk into a restaurant, and I looked at him and he looked at me, and I was like, I am going to marry him. It's easy to say that now that we've been married for 17 and a half years,
Yeah.
but I really did, like, I can be in that moment. And it wasn't like something that I said. It wasn't like I thought he was cute. Like, I mean, I did think he was cute, but like I saw him, and I had this, like, I don't know. I was 20. I've always been very intuitive, but when I was younger, I was much better at like that intuition. And I just like knew I was good. I don't even know how to explain it, but I was like, that is my husband. Like, there you go. I mean, it was really bizarre. So I do, and I don't even necessarily believe in love it. I mean, it's not even like I believe in it romantically. And I don't think it's like always the thing, right? Like, I think if I had met him at 30, I probably wouldn't have had that same reaction because I was like much more practical, you know? So I think but I also think that there are like friendships that you have in your life, like with people that you meet and you just feel like you've known them forever. You have this like connection with them that kind of is far beyond what you should feel. And I don't know what that is. And I can't really explain it, but I think it's true. I mean, I think especially in like adult friendships, I can name like probably on one hand, like a few people that I kind of have met in my life and have just felt like very connected to right away. And even, I mean, going back, this is like silly because I guess the kids that you're friends with when you are growing up are, they're generally like your parents' friends' kids or whatever. But my best friend forever, we met in kindergarten, and the first day of kindergarten, she cut my hair. And that's how we met. And we've been best friends ever since. And our parents didn't really, I mean, I guess they like vaguely knew each other, but our parents became really good friends because we were like best friends. We were like inseparable after that. So I'm like, I don't know. I can't explain it. But I think, your whole life, there are like people that are kind of put in your path. That's like probably y'all probably think I'm woo woo. But I mean, I don't know. I do think that there's something about, I do think you connect with different people. And that doesn't mean that like those instantaneous friendships are the best ones. I just think there's sometimes they're just people that you instantly like. I always wonder about that. I'm like, what is that? Why is that? I read an article the other day that it has something to do with genetics. So I don't know if that's true, but that the people that you tend to be like super connected to, you have this same DNA as like you would a fourth cousin. So, I don't know. But obviously there are researchers out there that are also interested in this phenomenon.
Exactly. I think it's great. The other thing you mentioned, which I would love for you to define, is literary love. What did you mean by
Literary love.
literary love?
Well, I'm going to tell you here's another little behind the scenes fun fact for you. So originally I had, that line had come to define cinematic love. And one of my copy editors was like, film hadn't been around that long. Like you probably shouldn't call it cinematic love. And I was like, oh, that's a good point. So I called it literary love instead. But I think there is something that has to happen. I mean, I think in general, I mean, yes, I met Will and said I'm going to marry him, but I don't think that's necessarily normal. And even if it was, like we dated for a long time, you date and you get to know each other and things are happening over this long span where I feel like on a page, on a screen, you don't have that kind of time. I mean, maybe if you're writing a big epic saga that's 900 pages long, but in general, if I'm writing a 400-page book, I don't have a year for these people to fall in love. And so I think as the reader, we have to suspend a little bit of disbelief, right? Like probably you're working up, if you're writing something romantic, you're probably working up to something big at the end that's unfolded over a few weeks or a few months, which is not necessarily realistic. And so I think that's kind of what he meant, or those, just those initial kind of butterflies, that sort of love at first sight that we read about a lot and we see a lot, but maybe it doesn't happen a lot. So.
Well, you mentioned Harris earlier, and I find him so fascinating as a character. I know that this is a standalone book, but could you take Harris and because it seems like he has so much going on that we just don't know behind the scenes. And I mean, he needs a love interest, just saying.
Okay, here is a trivia question for 10,000 points over here. Does anybody remember Harris? Because he was in one of my other books. Mindy raised her hand. So Harris was Amelia's love interest in Under the Southern Sky. And she dates Harris, but she ends up with Parker. And so I actually kind of reused Harris because I thought he was cute and fun. I thought he would be a good brother and we would get to see a little more of him. But yeah, I really like him, and I could completely see him getting to be, a main character in another book.
Yeah, I mean, he is. He's fantastic, especially, I mean, just the banter. And I mean, he has such a warm personality, but also a little bit standoffish at times. I don't know. I just
Yeah.
thought he was great.
Yeah,
And I
he's
think,
definitely like a complicated character for sure.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
he's fun to write, and he was really fun to write. He was a really fun love interest to write. But I thought he would be a good big brother too. And I think he has that personality of like, I'm not going to help you, you're on your own. But then of course he like tries to swoop in to save the day too. So
Well, I think you just surprised a lot of people with that little trivia fact. So, a lot of friends and fiction people are putting that in their back pocket to remember. So, thank you for that. I think some of the most quotable moments, though, in this book, was Rebecca St. James's tips to Virginia, which I mean, to me, it was just like highlight, highlight, highlight. Were those difficult to perfect, or was that something that you just had innately in you and it just comes out? Or I would love to know that bit of it because that was just so special.
So that was something that I started doing, and about 8 chapters in, I was like, "What are you doing? You're gonna have to come up with like 35 of these. Why would you do that to yourself?" But they were just super easy. I just thought about because I thought like, okay, well, I'll do them until I can't, and then I'll figure it out from there. Like maybe I'll sprinkle them in, or maybe I'll throw them out completely, or that's all part of the drafting process. And I would rather have too much than not enough. Like, this is not what you asked me, but like an example of that, Townsend had a very full, equal to Bex and Keaton point of view. And then when I got to the end of the book, I was like, this book is just too long. And I see Nancy down there. She messaged me recently and was like, how long do you think is too long? And I was like, I'm going to be honest. I think 100,000 words. Like, I think when you get over that in like this specific genre, I think it starts to feel long. And so I cut like half of his point of view, which broke my heart because I love him. But I was like, I need my readers to, and I want them to roll through. I don't want them to be like, okay, this is getting too long. Um, so, but yeah, so I just thought, well, maybe I'll get rid of them, maybe I'll keep them. And they just were so easy. I don't even think I edited a single one of. There was maybe one. I remember my editor flagging two of them and saying she thought they were too similar. So there was like one that I changed, but otherwise they were just what you see is what was originally on the page. So that was kind of fun.
That's impressive. I kind of hope for a little bit of a companion. I mean, I know that Keaton does this, but like I
Yeah.
kind of feel like you could do something special with it as well for,
Yeah.
tips. I don't know. Have you considered?
We talked about that. We really did. We talked about that. And I wasn't sure. Although there's always the paperback. The paperback comes out in April. So there's always something, we could always do like a little something fun, for a paperback original, some kind of little Rebecca St. James's Guide. Well, and we toyed around with the idea of calling it Rebecca St. James's Guide to Entertaining. But I was like ultimately afraid that at the end people would think it was nonfiction. And because that happened to us with The Secret to Southern Charm. I had people that would come to my book signings and they thought The Secret to Southern Charm was like a how-to like Southern etiquette guide. Not often, but like more than you would think. It was kind of funny. And of course, that was a lot earlier on in my career too. So, I mean, maybe at this point, like if you were coming to a signing, you would like maybe have a requisite amount of knowledge that like I write fiction. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, you're always hoping to get new readers, right? So I didn't want people to come and think I was going to do a cooking demonstration for them or anything.
You're not demoing at Costco yet. Okay, well, I will say though, like the Mitford series, I don't know if anybody here has read that, but they had that companion cookbook and like just something little holiday special, like at some point. I hope you can whip that up.
I love Mitford so much. I'm glad you
Okay.
brought that up. I should go read that again.
Oh, so sweet.
Okay.
Absolutely. Like it just gives me the warm and
Mhm.
fuzzies.
All the warm fuzzies.
The other thing, since I'm putting out requests, I'm just gonna say
Okay.
I what I wanted in this, I need a novella because we didn't get the kickoff party. we talked about Bowen going to it for the first time. And then the next day they're like, it's over. So I kind of wanted all that to do because
You wanted to see the party and the yeah,
yes, that party had to be awesome. Like just
it was one of those things that kind of got on the cutting room floor. Again, I get a little, I'm like, we've got too much middle. There's too much middle in the middle.
no, but that's always good. When we're left wanting more, it's a positive sign. So the other thing I wanted to talk about a little bit is just the scenic, like you talked about, the scene was a character. Beaufort is a beautiful place, but it really came to life in this book. And I almost felt like when she's like riding and the dog and the dolphins are going, and it felt like that Chevy Chase movie where they're putting on the Norman Rockwell beautiful scene. Have you seen Funny Farm?
No.
No. Okay. Anyways, it's like that perfect idyllic. Anyways,
Yeah.
if anybody hasn't watched it, it's a funny Christmas movie. But it was just beautiful. Like I know you've lived there a while. Did you have to do much research on the town, or have you been there long enough that it just sort of came out as quickly as the rest of your books?
Yeah, so I think it took, I guess we've lived here 9 years, 8 years, 8 or 9 years. And I think it took that long of living here to be like, I can really write about this. And I mean, everything that I wrote in the present day, pretty much, I'm sure there are exceptions. But pretty much everything that I wrote is very real and kind of like in keeping with, what Beaufort is really like. And yeah, I mean, there's so many days like I'll be walking Salt in the morning and the dolphins are just walking with us like all the way down the street, and then they come back, and pretty much every morning, like especially early in the morning, like the horses are out and they're grazing. And I mean, it's magical every day. Like it's never not magic. It's like the sunset. Like I was looking at the sunset tonight and I was like, the sunset, we just got back from New York and I love New York so much. And I was like, New York is amazing. Do not have the sunset, I mean, there's just something about it's like the sunset every day is just something really special and different. So, and there's certain things that I like kind of, played on like the doghouse dames. I mean, there are certainly groups that meet every morning for coffee and kind of are like, pulling strings behind the scenes in town. And, um, I felt like the modern day parts, like I didn't have to do a whole lot, but I did do research on, the 50s through seven or 40s, just right in the 40s, 30s through 70s parts. And that was really fun. And actually what was kind of funny about it is there's a huge push in North Carolina to digitize all the old newspapers. And so all of the papers from like 1935 to like 1960 something had been digitized. And so everything that I wrote about in like the 30s, 40s, 50s, like even down to the man trying to break the world record for driving blindfolded, like all of those things are real. Like they were actually happening in Beaufort or in Carteret County. Like the the dancing team that's in town, like all of those things were real, and I pulled them out of newspapers. But by the time I got to the 70s, those papers hadn't been digitized yet, so I had to actually like go to the library. And it is extremely difficult to research that way, and God bless people that have been doing this for a million years, because it's really, really hard. It's hard to find things. And then it's even harder once you've found them to then go back and find them again. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is crazy. But so I did do a lot of real research. So anything that you read about, I'm trying to think. There are some exceptions, like the Old Homes tour, but I wrote what the exceptions were in the acknowledgments of the book. I can't remember every single thing at this particular second, but
No, I mean,
everything
I love
is
that you
free.
discuss it right there in the acknowledgments. So we
Yeah,
have that, but you
yeah,
did mention in the acknowledgments, since we're there,
yeah.
that you didn't want to give spoilers with your family ties to this book, but
Oh
I
yeah.
feel like now's the perfect time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So some of you have probably heard this at this point, but I had a great aunt and uncle that passed away in a plane crash in their own plane before I was born. And it was something that, I mean, it wasn't like, I don't know, it's hard to explain. It wasn't like something that we sat around and talked about a lot, but I certainly was aware of it. I knew it happened. And I guess just being a kid, you don't have the same sort of filter, but I used to ask my grandmother about it sometimes, and she would always, tell me about it and like these little details. And um, in real life, as I say in the acknowledgments, they were missing for several weeks, and my grandmother would always say it was the hardest thing that ever happened to her, of course, as you can imagine, because not only had they passed away, but you didn't know. I mean, she was like, we didn't know. We didn't know, were they alive? Were they going to be found somewhere? And so that was really hard. And they worked really hard to keep them in the media, which, I think this was like it was the 60s. And, that was a little harder. You didn't have like a 24-hour news cycle. So, but about 2 weeks in, a psychic called my grandmother on the phone and told her that she knew where her sister was. And the next day, a group of Boy Scouts hiking in the woods found their plane at the latitude and longitude location that the psychic had called my grandmother and told her, which is so bizarre. But obviously, I didn't put that in the book because y'all would have been like, oh, how convenient. She couldn't figure out a way to end the book, so a psychic finds them. But oh gosh, I'm just seeing Nancy's little boy. Sorry, I probably shouldn't have said all of that. um, but I fast forward, many, many years, and about 5 years ago, I was talking to my grandmother one day. But I don't know why we were talking about, I think we were just talking about family and family traits. And she just said to me, we weren't talking about the accident or anything. And she just said to me randomly, my sister always used to say she never wanted to grow old. And she's like, so it's helped me kind of make peace, with her sort of untimely death. And the next day, their son, who is my mom's cousin, who kind of their sons kind of became a part of, my mom and her three sisters, kind of I mean, they were always a part of their family. I don't mean it like that, but, like did holiday in more of a like brothers and parents kind of way after their parents passed away, because they were in college and law school. So they were, not super young, but pretty young. And so so Doug had flown to Salisbury to see my grandmother, and he had just had heart surgery. And I was scolding him, and I was like, there's no way that you are cleared to fly right now. There's no way. I do not believe that. And he was like, well, I'm not. And he said, but I'm starting to see the end of my flying years. And he said, I remember my dad used to say all the time that he never wanted to live when he couldn't fly. And I had just one of those like head to toe chills moments. And I thought, she didn't want to grow old and he didn't want to live when he couldn't fly. And I don't think they actually planned it. Like, I don't think they actually, organized their demise. But I thought, I always knew that I wanted to write something that was inspired by them and that was inspired by their story. And when they said those two things, I thought, oh my goodness, what if what happened to them isn't what we think? And again, I don't think that that's the truth, but I thought it would make for a good story.
If you have questions, you get to ask Kristy questions. But before we get to that, be thinking of yours, and I'm going to give you rapid fire questions. Are you ready, Kristy?
I'm ready.
All right. Best smell.
Christmas tree. And it is woo in my house right now.
Perfect. What's your favorite room in your house?
My office, where I am right now.
Favorite beach?
I should say Atlantic Beach where I live, but I kind of think it would be like Yost Van Dyke, maybe in the Virgin Islands.
Nice. All right. Diamonds or rubies?
Oh, that's a hard one. I think rubies because they're my birthstone.
Cooking or baking?
Baking for sure.
Do you like planning or attending parties better?
Planning. Both, but I love to plan a party.
Do you have a summer supper Bible yourself?
No, I'm not that organized.
And do you prefer, what is your go-to, blueberry muffin or pot pie? Kind of that go-to food gift.
I love I guess because those were in the book.
Yes.
Pot pie. Yeah, it's a definite, yeah. But that's inspired by my mom. She gives everyone a chicken pot pie. Like when they move to town, when they have a baby, and it's the best thing because, and now I send them to everybody too. Cause I'm like, if you're sick, if you've just had surgery, if you've just like any of those things, if you've just had a baby, like any of those things that make you like ever so slightly nauseated, like chicken pot pie is just like the best thing. It's like bland and warm and delicious. And it's a good one. Good job,
It
Mom.
absolutely is. And I totally agree. It's a perfect comfort food. So Miss Woodson, good decision, I will say. All right. I will go ahead and open it up because we have a line of great readers here. So I'm going to go ahead and get it going. So go ahead and ask your question, John.
Hi, Kristy. It's so nice to see you. I love your books.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
I had a question. I don't know if you can answer it, but
Okay.
the one of the inspirations I've heard you talk about in other forums about this book, that you had visited a home that had like been entombed in time. And I
Yeah.
always wondered what was the backstory? Why did that couple just like walk away from their life?
I don't know. And that's actually something like no one really knows. It's kind of like an urban legend in town. I mean, it's an urban legend, but it's true, right? I mean, like we were there, we saw it. I, I don't know. And I really, really wish that I did. But it's been long enough ago now. So that happened. So when we went in the house, I was 10. So that was, almost 30 years ago. And the parents, like the people that had gotten in the fight, had passed away by then, and it was the children who ended up putting the house on the market. So unfortunately, I'm not sure that I'll ever know, but I look back now and I'm like, if I could have just had a couple weeks in that house, if I could have just had a couple weeks there, like maybe I could have figured it out. um I feel like though people sort of tend to say that it was just like one of those moments where it wasn't whatever happened at the table. It was just like the straw that broke the camel's back, right? Like it was like everything had just been boiling up to this one moment. And it was like, it just all exploded at the Thanksgiving table, as things do. I read an article the other day that made me really sad, but it said something like most women say that the holidays are more stressful than tax season. And I was like, oh God, that's horrible. I was like, that's probably what happened to these people. They're probably just like, enough.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great question. All right, Sharon, I'm gonna add you in. Go ahead and ask your question.
Hi,
Hey,
Kristy.
Sharon.
I I just wondered, I just thought of this looking at the book. When you have all these blurbs, on the back and in the front, how does the one that actually makes the cover, how does that get picked?
Well,
Did you pick
that's a
it?
really good question. And so there are a lot of different things that go into it. One being, who have like sometimes I'll have like I'm trying to think who are the blurbs are for this one, so I can like give you some examples. So, okay, so like for example, Mary Kay had been a cover blurb of mine for Feels Like Falling. I think Patty had been a cover blurb for me before for like an older book. And so I think we just sort of thought, Emily had a new book out like kind of at the same time. They really felt like sometimes it's what the blurb says itself, like, and they felt like Emily's really encapsulated, like this is what the book is about in a sentence and a half. So, but I tend not to be the person that picks that. That's generally the publishing house, and sometimes they pick ones that surprise me. And sometimes again, it's just like variety, especially, 11 books in, they're kind of like, okay, who have we not had on the cover and what do we really like? But so I don't have a more
Mostly your
concrete
friends.
answer for you, but
Okay. Thank you.
yeah.
Great question, Sharon. All right, Anissa, I'm gonna spotlight you.
Hi,
Go
Anissa.
ahead.
Hey,
Oh, and by the way, Anissa's name is in the acknowledgments. I thought that was way cool.
I think
I
Sharon.
think I might be in a couple of Christie's books. I think I'm in most. I'm in more of Christie book than anyone else, to the best of my knowledge. But I think Joy's got 2 books next year, so Joy might pass you up. But
Oh, she might surpass me now. Darn it.
sorry. And Christie was actually the first in-person author event I ever went to.
Yeah, that's so cool. I love that.
But Christy, LB asked such great questions. So she took some of the things that I was thinking out about, but it's trying to think of something that we never talked about. I'm sorry.
Oh, you do
Curious
not sound
about
good. You need a hot toddy and a bedtime.
yeah, back to school, unfortunately. Somehow it went too fast.
So
Um,
sorry.
but do you have any writing rituals that you start the day with? I mean, I know you write a lot of words, and I know you, like you said, probably walking soft, having to get
Yeah.
well to school
Yeah.
and
So
all
I
that. But
think
do you?
I think I probably have more of a non-ritual than an actual ritual, if that makes any sense. And the non-ritual being that when I am drafting something, the words come first before I check text, before I check email, before I check anything that's like going on, any news, anything, because when I wake up, I mean, I can take, like I can have, it's different the way that your mind is kind of hacked, I feel like, by media and social media. Like I can talk to Will and Will, or like I can take Will to school. Like those types of things don't disrupt my train of thought. But definitely I can tell by the time I've like gone through texts and social media and emails, and my mind is so full of so many other things that it's like my attention's really diverted. So it's getting worse for sure, but I can still do it. Like sometimes I'll have a second writing session in the afternoon, and I can tell like it'll take me twice as long to write 2,000 words as it does before I've started checking things for the day. And I really do think it's that. I don't think it's like my mind being fresher. I think it's literally like the ping, 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 ping of all of those other things.
Well, thanks for sharing that with us. Thanks. Great question, Anissa. And we have Nancy that has a question. So go ahead, Nancy.
Hi, this is hello. Such great company tonight. Thank you for hosting this, LB. So a lot of authors say that they can see part of themselves, or they put little bits of themselves in every book. Did you see any bit of yourself in Keaton, where she started over in Beaufort, or any other particular character that you wrote about?
Yeah, so I think that's definitely true. I think there's like a little piece of us in every character that we write in some weird way. And sometimes the character that I think seems the least like me on the page ends up being maybe the most like me. This is not what you asked, but like, for example, I remember in Peachtree Bluff, people would always ask me who I related to most, and I always said Ansley. And that seemed kind of weird to people because she was this mother of adult daughters. But what I had in common with Ansley at that time is I was like sort of in that sandwich generation, and I had like a young child, but my husband's parents were also both sick. And so we were doing the like caregiving thing and the child thing. And I just felt like I related to Ansley the most, and like having these things on my plate, even though she shouldn't be like me on the surface. The thing that I really related to about Keaton that I didn't know I related to until after I'd finished the book is that I think one of the things I was working out in this story was tradition and what we let go of and what we hold on to. And I wrote this book right after my grandmother had passed away. And we were just sort of staring down the barrel of like those first holidays where there was, she was always the matriarch, and like that was kind of gone. And so, how did we move forward into that like new reality where every, aunt, uncle, and cousin was coming to Salisbury to my grandparents' house for Thanksgiving and Christmas and all of the things that we were doing. And so I think I was thinking about that. Like, I didn't know that I was thinking about that, but I think a lot of that came into play in this story where Keaton's kind of trying to decide how she can continue those traditions that her grandmother started now that she knows about them, but also fit them realistically into a life that looks very different. Thank you. Good questions, guys. I appreciate it.
And especially because you got to have those wonderful conversations with your grandmother about so many of these topics that you're writing about too, which is really amazing connection. I do have a share. I'm going to share screen really quick because Kristy has a new book coming out called Beach House Rules. And I wanted to show everybody the cover. Can y'all see that?
I love it so much.
Is it coming up?
So cute.
It is so cute. Tell us about it. Can you give us a little blurb or a little something about it?
Yeah. So Beach House Rules is about a woman named Charlotte whose husband has been accused of wire fraud. So she comes home to her house and she cannot get into it, and all of her accounts are frozen, and she has literally nowhere to go, and a teenage daughter who is in school and has no idea that any of this has transpired. So she takes up an acquaintance's offer on to move into a converted bed and breakfast they affectionately referred to as the Mommune, where two other mothers live with their children, as well as Alice, who owns the beach house. And Alice is an interesting character because she has three husbands that have all died in somewhat unusual ways. And the small southern town where they live, pretty much everyone thinks that she killed her husbands. one of the things I was most interested in this book was I kept hearing about these mommunes, these groups of mothers that were moving in together to raise their children for, a number of reasons, but mostly financial, but also just, having that support system. And I kept thinking about what a group of people in a small southern town would say about this unconventional living situation. And so that was kind of my like view into this story was, how things are perceived by the public and how they are in real life. And so kind of the lens that we get to see this through is a fictional account called Juniper Shore's Socialite. And Juniper Shore's Socialite becomes kind of the voice of the people in this town, sort of like the Greek chorus that is commenting on everything that they're doing, whether it's true or not. And so the book becomes a little bit of a commentary on social media in particular and how it shapes our perception and how we can actually use it to change perception. So I'm very excited about this book. It's a really fun book. Like it's like I think, I hope you guys think it's fun. I think it's fun. It was really fun to write. It's fun, like especially with the Juniper Shores socialite aspect of it. It's like a little bit snarky and a little bit, and Juniper Shores is a really fun town. It's like, it's sort of an upper crust beach town. So you kind of have these like, wealthy people behaving badly sort of situations, which was also really fun to write about. So, anyway, I hope it feels kind of like an indulgent summer read. And, but then of course, I mean, it's really deeply about female friendship and mothers and daughters and, the ways in which, we rise to the occasions that we are presented with in our lives.
Well, there is a lot of excitement in the chat. I will just say, Debbie gave us the countdown, 177 days. So
Debbie's my countdown queen.
Yes, I love it. And everybody's just ready for it. So we're excited to read it coming up. But you also have some things going on as a countdown yourself. Will you tell us about that?
Yeah. So May 5th, 2025 marks 10 years of my being a published author, which is really hard to believe. And so we've been doing something called the Chapters Tour, which has been really fun. Sometimes I have these ideas and everyone's like, oh, Kristy, like, why do you do this? But this one, everybody kind of thought was a fun idea to go back and like read or reread or just kind of revisit, some of my previous books throughout, the months leading up to this 10-year. And I kind of thought like, oh, like this will be something that people are like vaguely interested in. But I think we've had like, I don't know, 600 or 700 people sign up to kind of like participate in this, which has been really fun to just like hear from people and see what they thought. But so we've been going through the Peachtree Bluff series, and of course it's December, so it's probably obvious what we're reading this month. But because the Peachtree Bluff series is sort of what most people have read of mine, honestly, we're reading those like sort of two at a time. So sorry, busiest month of the year, and I'm giving you 2 books of homework, but we're reading The Southern Side of Paradise and Christmas in Peachtree Bluff. But if you need a good holiday read, Christmas in Peachtree Bluff it'll give you all the warm, fuzzy feels for sure. I wrote it during the pandemic when I was not getting to do all of the Beaufort Christmas cutesy town things. And so all of that's kind of in here.
Well, thank you so much. I hope everybody can join in on that. And I do love a Christmas read. It's so atmospheric. Like it's just time. It's just time. All right. I will ask 2 more questions and then we're going to sign off because I know we're over time. But you mentioned that there might be some news about books to screen, or do you have any other news on anything that you can share with us?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like, I think all of this I can share. We're getting ready to make the I don't know. Well, I won't tell you who, how about that? But A Happier Life has been purchased by a company that we all know and love. So I'm really excited about that. And hopefully we'll have like the official announcement in like the next week or 2, but everything's signed, sealed, and delivered. So that's exciting. So I'm super pumped about that because I think of everything. Like I would really love to see A Happier Life. I actually weirdly have a short story that we're working on right now too. And I'm like, well, okay, maybe I should write that as a novel, but I can't say too much about that yet. But The Summer of Songbirds has been optioned, and I believe the writer just signed on for that one, which is always kind of fun to get to see. And I will say, if there are any Summer of Songbirds like devoted fans out there, they are keeping it very close to the book, which it's always fun to see what people want to do, if they want to change it or they want to keep it the same. And then Under the Southern Sky has recently been optioned. And I don't know if I can say by who. I think I can say by who, by Warner Brothers. And there's an amazing producer in place that I absolutely love. And yeah, so they're working really hard on that. I will say TV and film is slower than, than the book world. But there's always like something exciting going on. Like we're working really hard on it. And a lot of you probably know that Peachtree Bluff had sold to NBC, and then we had written the pilot and had gotten the second episode. And then during the writer's strike, that all kind of fell apart, as did a lot of other things. But so we're kind of back to the drawing board on that one, and had a lot of good meetings and a lot of good interest. So hopefully we'll see that someday. But it's one of those things that like, it's always fun. I enjoy working on it. I'm learning a whole lot. It's a different way of writing for the things that I am writing. And hopefully someday something will get made, but I will be really honest and tell you that writing novels is my first really great love. And so if something gets made for TV, then great. And if not, then it's a fun ride.
Well, all really, really exciting news. I can't wait. I think it's exciting whether or not it makes it or not. I think it's just fun to hear about. But also we all want to know, do you have any book recommendations for us?
I don't read much. You imagine, y'all, like really? No, it's like that episode of Friends when Joey's doing the interview with the soap opera digest, and they get to the end and they're like, "What's your favorite soap opera?" And he's like, "Oh my God, I don't watch soap operas." Okay, sorry. So the two things I'm reading right now, oh my gosh, I love both of them so much, are Christmas with the Queen. So it's my first kind of like holiday read, which everybody's like nodding their head. It's so good, you guys. And these two books have something weird in common that I'm about to tell you. But that one's by Hazel Gaynor and Heather Webb, who's a really good friend of mine. And it's great. It's so good. I'm only about a third of the way through, but it's just really got me right off the bat. And then I have about 15 pages left, which I know it's like, why didn't you finish? But I think I couldn't quite bring myself to the end of The Story She Left Behind by Patty Callahan Henry, which is just fantastic. I have to tell y'all, I love it more than The Secret Book of Flora Lee, which I didn't think I was going to. I was like, there's no way. Like, of course I'm gonna lie and tell her that I like it more, but I'm not going to. But I really do. Like, I love it. It's really captivating. I did not see the ending coming, and they both take place during like that great smog in London, which is like really like singular, or at least like pieces of them do. So anyway, kind of funny. I was like reading both of them at the same time, and I was like, wow, that's really funny that they're just happened to be during the same time.
Well, we definitely have some FOMO and can't wait for Patty's book to come out, and we will be waiting with bated breath. So thank you for that. But I just want to thank you, Kristy, so much for joining us, and readers out there, thank y'all so much for joining. Please make sure you check out her Instagram for the latest news. We heard that we might be getting an announcement in a week or so. So we'll be paying attention.
I hope. Who knows? They
Who
tell
knows?
me things, and then it'll probably be like 6 months from now, but it's fine. It's fine.
Would love for everybody to follow the LBs on Facebook or Bookstagram for reviews, recommendations, and obviously author chats. But in 1 week, on December 8th, we're going to keep up our Summer in December series, and we'll be talking with Catherine Newman about her summer breakout novel, Sandwich. Ann Patchett, author of Tom Lake and the Dutch House, said, "Sandwich is a joy in book form. I laughed continuously, except for the parts that made me cry." Catherine Newman does a miraculous job reminding us all of where there is to be found in life. Then another one of my favorites, Rachel Joyce, who wrote The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry, said, "A piece of perfection, family love, secrets, a marriage that is ordinary, imperfect, sexy, and beautiful. I laughed, I cried, I laughed some more. A wonderful book about families love, disagree, fail one another, and endure." So it's a short book. I think it'll help you meet your 2024 goals if you haven't read it yet, and you can definitely get it read in 1 week. So I'll see everybody back in a week for that one. And then we're going to start out 2025 with Rufy Thorpe's Margot's Got Money Troubles. And this will be a perfect gift to tell your family and friends to get you, because we're going to start out that new year with it. And here's the big kicker. This is about to be a David E. Kelly Apple TV series. And y'all, who's starring in this? Nicole Kidman, Michelle Pfeiffer, Elle Fanning, Nick Offerman. Like, it's going to be huge. So I hope everybody
haven't
gets
heard
a
of any
chance.
of them.
Who's that? Who's that? So you're definitely going to want to read it. But we will be talking spoilers as usual for all of these books. So I hope you get a chance to read it. Again, y'all, if y'all have an author that you want to hear from, I know I got tons of requests for Kristy, and so thank her for joining us there. But if y'all have other authors that you want to hear from, please message me. Again, my Instagram, I'll have that broadcast channel where I announce all of those author chats coming up. Definitely want you to subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's where you can find all those past 60 author chats. And just, Kristy, you're so awesome.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun. Thank you guys. Thank you for being here. Thanks for spending your evening with us. It was so
Yes.
fun.
Oh, I do have one more. Y'all know I always have one more. What would the St. James house tell us as we leave today? What do you think?
Oh, just, probably what Rebecca St. James would say, just, love your people, relax into the holiday season. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's all about the people that you put together, not the presents.
That's right. And we don't want any turkeys left on the table. So
We don't want any
relax.
turkeys left on the table. We don't want any fighting. We just,
Fun.
just love each other.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night and a great week of reading. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.